welcome to the podcast that we didn't expect to make, but we
First episode.
Yeah, this started out as an Instagram stories thing that you were doing because
I was bored.
You like to share your life on social media, unlike me. But yeah, it got a good response. And obviously this is our favorite time of year. You and I, we love fall, but we love Halloween. And obviously we're stuck inside because of the pandemic. We haven't, we're not able to do our Halloween party that we normally do. Usually this room would be decorated with some sort of crazy theme.
It would be decked out.
Yeah.
Crazy. Not just, it's decorated currently.
Well, we should probably share some of that too eventually. I don't know if we'll share it here, but
not on this podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could share it. Are you going to make an Instagram page specifically for this now?
Yes. We will have a page that you can visit. We'll post what we can post there. Right. Image-wise, video-wise. And yeah, we'll share that in the credits of the podcast.
Okay. Is that a cocktail in there? Or are we cheersing?
Sure.
To the first podcast? Let's see how long it lasts. I got mine.
And by how long it lasts, it means how long it keeps his attention.
No, if there's engagement and people like this, I would love to keep doing it. I think it would be fun. I mean, you and I have enough fun talking about this stuff on our own. So.
Yep. And
if we're
everyone
gonna do,
I know.
Yeah, if we're going to do, oh, well, there you go. You're probably going to hear or see a chihuahua at some point. Right, dude?
It's part of the life.
It's part of the life. So you and I, obviously, like I said, like I mentioned, we love this time of year. One of the first dates we ever had, we watched scary movies and ate pumpkin treats, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it defines, and if you go further back, even friendship-wise, right? Like Halloween's, we would go to karaoke, and it would marry the two things that we pretty much have the most in common, which is the Halloween spooky season, as I call it, and music. So
the Halloween spooky season, as you call it.
Spooky season. No, I always say spooky season. Clearly, you're not on social media.
Oh my goodness! All right, well, this is an interesting alternative to how we usually spend our Halloweens. Although I do think you found one haunted house thing that we could do that was
a few. No, I found a few.
Okay, a few that were socially distant. So we'll probably be able to do that.
Yeah,
in the next
and a drive-through one.
Okay, the drive-through one.
Like
that's right.
You got to think like Six Flags Safari Adventure, but with zombies slamming on your window.
Okay. I love a good zombie.
I'm ready.
Although we're not talking about zombies here, though. So originally what we decided to do was we're like, let's see if a bunch of these older Halloween movies hold up. Yeah. Because you and I we've pretty much seen almost everything.
I mean, we've seen from the most popular probably to some of the most obscure. So.
Yes. Yeah. So hopefully eventually we can get to the obscure because that's probably going to be my favorite portion of this. But we decided obviously to start classically with slasher movies. And
we were a little critical. Like I feel like going through the list, you had to really think about it as part of the time that it was created, right? You can't think of it necessarily as today. So yes, we want to see if it holds up, but we also have to think about it from like what could be done at that time and how well it was done as a result.
Yeah, and obviously almost pretty much every movie on this list had some sort of massive cultural impact, which is basically what you're getting at is like, okay, even though we look back on it now and say this isn't scary or it's a little cheesy, back then, like you're saying, is like people
you got to factor it in.
Yeah, you do have to factor it in.
Like as much as you want it to be like, okay, it holds up today, you have to factor in how scary it was then because I talk about this all the time and you'll probably hear me say it a million times, but people are desensitized. You have to have like crazy shock value now to really make someone scared or like disgusted or whatever. And some of these movies, it was going to come across as subtle, I guess, because it's just not, for that time, it was new and it was hard enough to do what they were doing.
Of course. Yeah. No, I fully agree with that. And I tried to wrap my head around that a little better because I think in the beginning you were like, come on, you have to give in a little bit to the time.
Yeah.
So
just a little.
So with that said, these are the movies that we're going to be talking about. And I guess we're going to sort of do we're gonna go from what we found to be the worst of the group. It's 10, yeah. 10. So it's like a top 10 list.
It is a top 10.
And this is our top 10. It's just an opinion thing. Any kind of top 10 or any kind of rankings thing is all just opinion. It's all subjective. Like, people don't need to get so.
And there's Mark's disclaimer, because he can't stand giving something an award for art.
Yeah, art should not ever get an award, because art for me is personal. Art for you is art for everybody is personal.
Yeah. And this is our personal opinion.
Yes.
Of the most iconic slasher movies. Yeah. To kick off this genre, basically.
Right. So, okay. So we're going to stay with that within this podcast. It's just going to be about the slashers. And then, okay.
Because we got so much more to talk about.
We got a lot of stuff to talk about.
We can revisit these in so many ways later. Right. This is just the starting point of like, let's just go with the OGs.
Right. This boy is crying.
Oh, man. I'm going to have to cut it.
You're not going to stop.
Everybody.
Mr. Dude is
Mr. Dude's going to share his opinions.
I kind of figured you would make an appearance at some point, dude. Oh. This is not going to be super comfortable, but all right. So let's start with, which one did we like the least?
All right. So number 10 on the list is going to make a lot of people mad.
Probably.
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th.
And that's all. I mean, I don't even know what to start saying about it other than that.
See, I was just going to ask you first to kick it off. What did you think about the film? Is there anything that you liked about it?
I think what I liked about it is the idea. Mm-hmm. I liked the idea of it, right? And I think what happens is everyone jumps to Friday the 13th because we know it as Jason. And then when you're watching it, you remember, oh, yeah. It doesn't count now. So it was slow paced, which isn't great. Like, I feel like I kept waiting for something to be scary, and then, okay, this is the moment. And it wasn't scary, even when it was one of the scary scenes. I guess one of the ones that was the most compelling was the bathroom scene, where that's where you feel like, okay, someone's there and what is it? But it just didn't go far enough for me. Yeah. And I also felt like, going back to that conversation about the time, it could have been better for the time frame too.
Yeah. One of the first things that I commented on when we were watching this movie was the quality of the film struck me as odd. I don't know. This movie has like a very specific type of film that it uses. Like, there's a specific color to it. There's a specific grain to it. It almost reminded me a little bit of like a grindhousey kind of thing, the way it was shot. A lot of point of view shots, like POV type stuff.
Yep.
Randomly Kevin Bacon was in it, which I didn't know. So I was like, all right, there's a young Kevin Bacon.
For 2 seconds.
It's kind of interesting. Yeah, he doesn't last that long in the film, I guess. Well, maybe like midway through.
Yeah.
And then obviously Jason is not in this film.
At the end.
Well, yeah, I guess the little boy, which I was confused by, because I was almost like, I was into the movie, and I'm like, all right, they didn't go with like the supernatural route. I'm interested to see like how maybe Jason fits into the story later on, because obviously that's how we know the Friday the 13th franchise. So
that's how it became iconic.
Yeah. And then, so it's not supernatural at all. It's like the story about, her son drowns in the river or the lake.
The lake.
Camp Crystal Lake, right?
But wait, you keep saying it's not supernatural. However, that last scene is what makes it supernatural.
It brings it at the end.
Exactly. Yep.
But then it wasn't even clear to me if whoever wrote the film, if they meant for that to be like a real thing that she experienced or not, because I feel like the detectives, and like when she's laying in the bed at the end, are like, oh, there was no boy. Like, what are you talking about? That never happened. So it almost seems like, I don't know, this whole franchise, when it started, became something completely different than they had anticipated it to be.
Yeah, I mean, if you read about it, a lot of it was that last scene drove the rest of the franchise, because people wanted to know more about Jason.
Okay.
So it was almost like the way that they spun it worked in their favor.
Yeah.
It wasn't great in my opinion, the whole thing, but it was like one of the one of those fake out kind of movies where you think you know who the killer is and you're assuming because of the storyline. And then it just throws you for a loop. But that last scene is what drove them to make these others with Jason as such a staple, because people were like, who's Jason? Who's Jason? Who's Jason?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So what did you think of the mother and the actress who played the...
Can we not talk about it? I just felt it was just not, like, she needed to be more like menacing. Like, I thought it was great when she first gets out of the Jeep and they're like, oh, help me out. And she's like, it's okay. And she, so calmly, motherly leads her into the cabin again. And then from there, it was just like, the worst fight scene I might have ever seen in my life.
It's rough.
The kitchen and all that. Like, it was just, you lost it. Like, it was like, it should have been great. And it should have been like, oh, damn, the mother is doing it. Like, okay, mom is savage. But then it was just like, all right, this is like mom at the PTA who should have been making cupcakes and she's out here at the camp. And it's like...
the haircut, the sweater.
You didn't have the aggression needed.
It doesn't feel scary at all.
It actually took anything that would have been scary from the other scenes and made it just like dead. Yes,
because I would argue most of the film is okay.
Yeah.
Leading up to, like, the kills are okay, for the time. The Kevin Bacon one is cool, where she, like, it pokes through his throat or whatever. The problem with some of these, though, is like we have like the higher res, like remastered version of some of these, and you can see like the prosthetic makeup lines and stuff that you would have never been able to see back in 1980 on like a tiny little standard definition thing. Like, it's all like blown up pixels, like it's all blurry.
Yep.
There he goes.
Sorry, guys.
So that's another thing that, like, you were saying, like, oh, like, put yourself back in that time. But it is hard to transport yourself back there when it's like, look at how clear everything is.
Yep.
And I can see all the movie stuff that you would never see.
Agreed. I feel like it's like, it just was bad. It
was bad. So there was nothing you really liked about it. Nothing nice you could say about it. Because this is considered like... a classic.
I think again, it's the idea, and we're gonna get back to that idea being what scares you with some of these others in the ranking. But for me, it was like, all right, the idea of being at this camp, the idea of being away, the idea of not having phones accessible. Right? Like quick, like you got to run to go find a phone, right. Like be lucky that it works.
It's like the original Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah. And it's like that stuff gets you, right? You're deep in the woods and it's weird. And there's that, the crazy guy from town, right? Like there's like that crazy dude who shows up.
Yeah, the gas station guy.
The townie. And he's on the bike and he starts riding away. I'm like, Jason's going to get you.
Horrible.
So that was just like, you went, what? Like, okay, like... I could see how, like, back in the day, that might have been terrifying, right? Like the town crazy guy, but also in this day and age, and that we're like, okay, it's not fun to make fun of people who are mentally ill, right? And it's like, okay, this is just not it. It didn't do what it needed to do for us.
100%. I agree.
So,
all right, so what's next on the list? That's at 10.
That's at 10. Okay, so the funny part about this next one is we kind of keep forgetting about this one and forgetting to even rank it. So it's funny that it actually made it to 9. But it is I Know What You Did Last Summer. I don't even know how we put this on the list. You looked this up somehow.
Because technically it is a slasher. And
we put Scream on.
We put Scream on the list, and for whatever reason, and it's probably because we're 90s kids and we really took in and absorbed pop culture, like we were at that age in the 90s, even though we were born in the 80s, when we really took in like the culture. It was, when you're old enough to appreciate it, it's the 90s. And I remember Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer as being like the two staple horror movies of that time, or at least in the mainstream, they were super popular.
Yep.
So to me, it was like, okay, well, if we're going to put Scream on the list, I Know What You Did Last Summer was basically a film, I believe, that was created just to tap into what the Scream audience was.
Yes.
Scream was so successful. And it had almost like a cult following right away that obviously, there's copycats in Hollywood. Yeah. They're going to see another studio and they're going to be like, well, let's see if we can get the same audience to watch our film. So I Know You Did Last Summer, it has like the most 90s cast you could possibly imagine.
Oh, yes.
And Freddie Prinze Jr. may be, I'm not even joking, he may be one of the worst actors.
Oh my God.
Of all time.
My teenage years are crying.
Because you don't remember it that way, right?
No, well, to be fair, like you're judging a teenage girl who was like, oh my God, Freddie Prinze Jr., oh my God, and not thinking about acting skills, so it is hard to go back and say like, oh, I loved Freddie Prinze Jr., he was such a great actor. Like, no, okay, that's not what I was saying.
So
that's not why he was on my wall.
The flip side of this is Ryan Phillippe is a great actor. I don't know. I guess back then he was still too young. He wasn't very established. Yeah. And it kind of upsets me that he never really like broke out of that mold.
There's Cruel Intentions.
Oh, he was also in that movie Crash, which won Best Picture.
Crash, yeah.
But his career definitely didn't go on as long as I had expected it to, because he is actually pretty good in this movie. If anything, he's the one that lifts the entire cast up because nobody else is in his league.
You had Sarah Michelle Gellar, who was very popular at the time, right?
And she's not bad. She's okay in it. She's better than Jennifer Love Hewitt.
It's not like they gave her like this crazy dynamic role.
Yeah,
like she's the beauty queen, like girl, and that's it,
Right.
So this one, I don't. Oh gosh. So it was 1997. Mm-hmm. This is the year on this one, right? So you expect a lot more, in my opinion. I think that they tried to really do something unique, aka this fisherman guy.
And how goofy is the fisherman costume?
Now, yes, the costume is goofy. The hook, however, is the terrifying part. That to me is the only thing that was really saving this and making it better than Friday the 13th, right? Is that at least they got creative with the story, right? It was they hit this guy and they think he's dead and he's not really, and they can't really tell, and they don't know or did someone else see it, right? And I did feel like that was the only thing I was watching it for, was like I really didn't know, not even the kills, but more so that I didn't even really know where it was going. Like, is he really dead or is he not? Because
so you didn't remember.
He was nobody.
You didn't remember who the reveal was of who it was.
But that's how forgettable this film is.
Yeah, I actually did remember it.
Yes,
but I didn't remember it right away. I remembered it about halfway through.
Yes.
The hook is. I'll give you that. I think the hook is a unique, like that fisherman's hook as a weapon is pretty unique. It's just, again, like if we're thinking about like, okay, these are slashers, which means the actual person stalking you and hunting you should be scary.
Yes.
And I can't help with these first two just be like, it's you? Like that. So it ends up being the dad of whatever. It's not even, it was just so dumb. Like, I don't even care.
Yeah. It got so convoluted towards the end, and then like the guy was so useless to the rest of the film. It wasn't like someone that, it wasn't a character that you've really been seeing and interacting with, and then all of a sudden it's like, it's you, and it's like, who is you?
Yeah, why do we care?
Like, I don't actually care. Is it like, does it matter?
They were trying to sow the seeds of some sort of like intricate plot line that was just not intricate. It's just a bad plot.
Yeah.
So it's pretty bad acting all around. The directing is pretty bad. The soundtrack is terrible.
I knew you were going to go to that.
Well, which is...
Because as we get later, we talk a lot about how the music makes these films. Yeah.
But what's interesting is like this was around a time where like this was music that I really liked, and I still have such love
like
for the 90s. It's like it's a beautiful era for music, and it's like, how did you end up with the songs that you picked? Like
worst songs. Where we'll get to some others in the same time frame that really had good music. I felt that really fit the scene. So we'll talk about that later.
All right. So what's next on the list?
All right. So next is another classic, and again, this might make people upset, but A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah. So
again, kind of low. For what we expected.
Tell me about this, because you were in the camp that Freddy, for you as a kid, was
Still
was terrifying
still
and still is.
And again, it goes back to the idea, right? So a lot of horror movies play not just on the visual, but on the psychological. And we'll definitely get to a top 10 list of psychological horror movies on its own. But Freddy is one of those psychological ones for me, where I'm such a big person who is invested in my dreams and what happens in my dreams. And that's like a whole nother conversation, but I definitely have very vivid dreams that feel real. And the idea of someone like Freddy infiltrating my dreams when it is one of those dreams where everything lines up and it's real is terrifying. And so I just feel like, for me, when I think about Freddy, I think about two very iconic scenes, which we'll talk about in that movie, which is what makes it above I Know What You Did Last Summer and Friday the 13th. And actually, we should mention that. Part of the reason they're so low is that we couldn't pick a scene from that was
There's
like,
no scene that's memorable.
oh, I remember, this particular scene in this moment. I feel every other movie in the list at this point has one of those, except maybe one.
As you're saying that, though, I just remembered that I pointed out the Kevin Bacon kill. So for whatever reason,
but it's only because it was Kevin Bacon in your mind.
Maybe, yeah, because I don't really remember the other kills.
Yeah, no, you pointed it out because you were saying, "Oh, Kevin Bacon's in this movie." Right. Like, so it wasn't that it was like you were waiting to watch Friday the 13th because you love this scene. I feel like almost every other one of these movies, except one, or except maybe two that were new to us, I feel like I could tell you at least 2 to 3 scenes that were my favorite.
So what are the scenes that you're talking about here?
It's the blonde girl, and they're in the bedroom, and she was sleeping, and all of a sudden she's on the ceiling, and Freddy is slashing her, and she's up in the corner over here, and
really cool,
dragging around the whole room. Yeah. And again, for the time, like, that shot was done, in my opinion, so well, and it brilliant. Was terrifying, like absolutely terrifying. So if you've ever been somebody who has sleep paralysis, which I have, and Mark and I talk about this a lot, to know what that feels like to not be able to wake up from your dream and then put this guy in it, that's what does it for me, right? So this girl is being thrown around the room, slashed, blah, blah, blah. And then later on you see her in a body bag dragging through the school. I will never forget those scenes. I talked about them before we even watched it because I told you, I was like, no, it has these 2 scenes that they're so horrifying. Yeah,
she's in sort of that, it's like a plasticky, is it a body bag? Because it's see-through. You can...
It is. It's a body bag.
It's just a clear body bag.
It's like not really clear. It's opaque. You can see enough to know it's a body and blood.
Yeah, she's got blood all over, and then they drag her down the hallway.
Some horror fan is going to tell us we're wrong. So,
I'm sure.
But it's a body bag to me, and that's how I remember it.
Right.
And then the second scene, I put those two things kind of together because the imagery is similar, but the other scene that I very much remember is when the main girl is in the bathtub, and you're getting that moment of, is she awake or falling asleep? And then you know she's asleep because Freddy's hand comes up in the bathtub. Her mom calls, she moves, it's gone, and then it comes back. Terrifying. Like, again, like, to think about being in the bathtub and this happens. I didn't take baths for years as a kid because I was thinking this was going to happen. Those moments of that film stand out as iconic.
I mean, I agree 100% with all 3 across the board. They are all great scenes. Obviously, the bedroom scene, I would go as far as to say that it's one of the most iconic horror scenes of all time. It has to be.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Which kills me. For a movie to have that scene in it, and for it to be so low on this list. And I think part of that was, again, I don't know, Freddy is not really established that much as a character in this film. I think in my mind, I was remembering how Robert Englund developed Freddy over the course of the series. I think I was more familiar with some of the later ones. And I knew, like, Freddy was he's sort of like a wise ass sometimes. He has like...
Later,
yeah. So in this film, there's none of that.
It's literally just like a man who looks terrifying coming at you in your dreams in the scariest places.
Yeah, and it's almost like they hadn't really even figured out the face yet. Like, we don't get to see that Freddy face, the iconic Freddy face. Like, I remember.
You see it a little bit,
but it's like... they must have not been able to get the makeup right or the prosthetic or however they do that. It wasn't
realistic enough looking. It did.
Well, yeah, so they sort of shrouded it in mystery. He was more silhouetted. Yeah. And they tried to make him menacing that way, but I don't know. And maybe it was my own bias going into the film, as I was expecting that Freddy. Yeah, I don't know how old I was when I first saw this film. I maybe 7 or 8. I mean, I started watching horror movies very, very early. My mother had no issue with it. Yeah. My mother's a huge Halloween fan. She's a huge horror movie fan. As was my
family too.
Yeah. I think my mom would run into a corner and cry forever if she knew some of the horror movies that they have now.
That we've watched.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's definitely some I would never show your mom.
No.
That's actually going to be, a future segment, we hope, where we can film some reactions
to people who don't normally watch this stuff.
Pretty much no one we know even scratches the surface of liking at this level. Yeah. But the thing that we enjoy is that our friends still entertain us and humor us for it. All right. So we've got the 3 out of the way. We are on to prom night.
Prom night. This is the first time you and I have ever seen this movie.
Yes. One of the 2 on the list. That was the only one that we haven't seen.
Right. So we had no knowledge of this film other than Scream, right? Because it gets referenced in the movie Scream. If they watch Prom Night, they'd save time.
There's a formula to it, a very simple formula.
Right.
Everybody's a suspect. Okay.
So also Prom Night was coming up on a lot. I was just searching older slasher horror movies. Yes. It was coming up on every list. Mm-hmm. This movie, to me, I don't know why it's considered a slasher. Because it's just a guy in a ski mask, basically.
Yeah, but okay, see, this is where we argue now. Because what is Mike Myers? He's a guy in a, what's his name? What's the guy's name that the mask is made out of?
It's William Shatner.
William Shatner's face and a knife. What's any different than like a guy in all black and a ski mask with a knife?
Well, one is absolutely terrifying looking, and the other is just the ski mask, and it was almost like it had like a sheen to it almost. It wasn't it wasn't even like
rubbery looking, and it looked real cheap. Like the hair's all crazy.
It looked horrible.
Yeah.
But this movie, it tries really, really hard to do these bait and switchy things about like there's a psycho on the loose, and it's like like this random guy you're supposed to be scared of that has nothing to do with the plot. He's just some killer from some other town that did something else completely unrelated to this story.
Okay.
And immediately I'm like, they must think I'm an idiot to try to put this into the plot line. Like I'm going to buy it. Now, I will say the way that this film starts out with all the kids in the abandoned building playing the
chanting,
Killers coming.
Killers coming.
The beginning of this movie is unnerving. It's a little uneasy.
It gets you, yeah.
Yeah. And you're like,
this kid's not going to die like that. No shot.
Yeah. So this kid plummets to her death out the window.
Pretty badly, because then the window falls on her after.
Yeah.
So like that's the like double whammy.
It's rough. It's rough. And it's like, okay, they're just going to have a bunch of kids kill another kid to start this movie. That's savage in my book.
Yeah.
And then you realize that like Leslie Nielsen is in it. And you're like, wait, I thought I was watching something else. And it's like, no, this is going to be like a cheesy high school thing. That had to be
before Top Gun. And that's why. It was, yeah. Like it worked so probably at the time.
Yeah. So in our mind, we have a different idea.
I'm thinking Leslie Nielsen, Top Gun, which by the way, we should probably go watch those.
Well, yeah. Well, not Top Gun.
Isn't that what it's called?
No.
When he did the comedy one?
And now I can't remember the name of it. Top Gun is with Tom Cruise.
Oh. You know what? I think because it's supposed to be a parody of it.
You're right. He does like some sort of like detective parodies or whatever.
That's an epic film. We're horror.
Yeah.
We're horror first people. I don't know.
Well, listen, I also have the worst memory in existence.
I don't remember names of anything.
So now Leslie Nielsen's in it. He plays the dad. Jamie Lee Curtis, such a babe. I love her. She's incredible. She was absolutely perfect for these types of movies, I felt.
Yeah.
Because she's
so believable.
She's very, very skinny. she has this really like frail vulnerability to her.
The
but
naked gun.
The naked gun. You knew how to gun in
I
it.
knew, but I think it's a parody.
So she's very frail. She has like this vulnerability to her physically.
Yep.
But the way that Jamie Lee Curtis plays these characters and how she carries herself with such confidence and charisma, you really believe that this is somebody that she's actually strong. Like it's a strong female on screen, which I find amazing for these times.
Yeah,
like,
that's why women know that Jamie Lee Curtis is a badass. Like it's a known thing. Like she got that hype that was like, no matter what she does, badass.
Yeah, she sort of like broke through. And very early on, you kept saying, because she's in Halloween also, you're like, she just looks old to me.
She looks older than, like she always looked the same. That's almost like an ageless thing, like where at any age you looked the same.
Well, I think it was also like we were just looking at, obviously this is a thing in any kind of movie where they cast like high school kids. They're always like in their 20s. Right. Recently, it's changed. Like the more modern stuff is really, really good at casting age appropriate.
Yeah,
people.
A lot of these old films, you were like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
so we looked it up. I think she was like 20 years old or something and she was supposed to be, this is prom night senior year, so she's supposed to be 17 or whatever.
Yep.
But they all do sort of dress like adults, which is odd. Like I remember, we were sort of confused when the movie started, and you see the scene of her with her dad
telling
and the
who
brother
was the brother
walking
and who
up
was
to
the
the
friend.
school. I was like, these are just teachers that work at the school? And you're like, no, I think you're like, no, I think that he's their dad. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, you had no idea.
I had no idea.
No clue. And I think it's just, they did do a good job. And I want to say, like, it's our fault for just not listening and being not attentive. But I know specifically when the little girl died, they all go in a row and she's naming each kid right away and then cutting to scenes where they're talking to each other and they're naming each other.
Yeah.
So they tried to make it almost like they knew people were going to get confused and put it in there.
Well, because it's a huge flash forward. You're introduced to them as children for like 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden they're in high school.
Yeah.
It's a big drastic jump in time, and I struggled with this with so many old movies. All the guys look exactly the same. And they have the same haircuts. They wear the same clothes. It's freaking weird, man.
Is that like the curly, like short,
it's like a bob
fro
kind of thing.
No, it's a crown. It's either the clown fro or like the Ken doll.
The Ken doll, perfect. Yeah, you have a scene in this film that you really, really liked, and I think this was ultimately what had propelled it above Freddy.
Yes,
because of how cool this scene is. Talk about it. It's actually the friend, the bitchy friend, who I thought that actress was incredible in this movie. She does a great job, but her kill scene is particularly memorable.
Yeah, because I think she has so many moments where she thinks she's okay, which is what I like, because it obviously leads to that moment where the killer is close by and can hear you. But I love those little breaks of where she's going and the way that the school almost seemed endless, right?
Yeah.
And that was the thing. It was like she's trying so desperately to get back to the party, but this damn school is like the most enormous school I've ever heard.
She ends up in like the auto garage at some point.
Yeah, and that one was terrifying too, because it's very similar to like New Texas Chainsaw, when you're in a place and there's a lot of things scattered around, right? And it's easy to kind of jump and move if you know how, which I found it interesting that of all the things that she was going to do, she went into a car in the front seat. Yes. And I'm like, girl, like, come on. You could have been like, you're looking at cars from back then and the back seat. You were on that ground. No one was going to see you. Like, come on.
Yeah.
But what I did like was, how long it was. You had the music going the entire time. And this is one of the movies where I really caught on the music side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The disco stuff is really, it pairs well with horror.
The music and the sound of the 70s music has so much pressure, right? Like,
the pump.
It never stops. And so even when she's freaking out in those, classroom situations, running from this guy, the music is just going and going, and that whole part
and
of
so
it,
is he.
I felt so tense from that. Like,
he's an extremely fast and agile
so
killer.
fast. The other scene that you're talking about too that's crazy in this is the van.
Yeah, the van guy. Van guy was just like something else.
But then what you hated was how fast the van blew up.
Oh my God.
Over the
I
edge.
forgot about that until you just brought it up.
Yes.
It was an immediate visceral reaction by me too while we were watching it. It was like I saw that thing explode to high hell and I went, no way. There's no shot. And you were like, what? That doesn't seem weird to me. I'm like, it doesn't seem weird that a van flying off of a cliff on first impact erupts into like a nuclear explosion.
Okay, but to be fair, I'm not an idiot. I was thinking it as like the gas tank is the first thing to get hit. Like in a van like that, the gas tank had to be huge. And I'm thinking like if it, and then I was like, okay, no, it didn't. It obviously didn't. I can visually see that it went
nose first.
Yeah. So whatever. Okay. I was thinking of it like
hilarious.
The other iconic scene in this one is when, oh my God, that guy just wanted to kill him. The like annoying unibrow man.
Freaking unibrow caveman.
Great casting because I really hated him so badly with every ounce of my being.
That's not a real character, is it? That's a real guy somewhere.
Oh, well, I mean, maybe back then.
We've seen some characters on your mom's house, I guess.
Yeah, you get into that dark web, there's some things. So that kill, what I liked about it was, again, for the time, it was a smart setup and it was executed so well. So when he gets his head just cut off and it's rolling, it's on the stage where they can then be like, all right, we're just going to cut a hole here, put you under the stage. Had his like collar hanging out and it looked so real that at first glance I went, wow, that looks so real. And then I was like, oh, duh.
I'm like,
Dolores.
yeah, babe, that's because he's
like under the fucking stage.
What do we have next?
We are now at a very old classic, Psycho.
Yeah. I love this movie. I think as a film, it's great. I don't know. I was sort of on the fence about why this is considered a slasher, but I guess for lack of a better category to put it into, it sort of because slashers didn't really start until Black Christmas and Texas Chainsaw. That's when like the slasher became a thing. This movie's 1960. So it's the oldest film on the list. It is probably one of Hitchcock's best films, if not his best, in my opinion. The acting in this film is stellar. It's probably better than any other movie on this list.
This was like horror with really strong acting.
Very strong acting.
So it was acting first, the horror second. Yeah.
I mean, strong everything. Great directing. Obviously, when you have great acting, usually that is part of having a great director, is getting those performances. Yeah, everything about this movie I really, really loved. I don't have anything bad to say about it other than the ending sort of explainer piece that we get. There's sort of this monologue by his psychiatrist that explains like now, at times he was his mom and at other times he was Norman. But now he's fully his mom. And I'm like, just show me these things. Don't tell me. That's what they always say. Or that was like screenwriting 101 for me when I took that class in college. It was like, show, don't tell.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself having to write one of these like 2 or 3 page monologue type of things explaining the plot to people, it's probably not the best idea.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I love the twist of it. The twist of it is great. It's great writing. I think the only reason that it falls kind of lower on the list is it's not scary.
Yeah, I agree. I think like there's that iconic shower scene, right? One of the other things about it was that you really cared about the characters. Like at first because it was the first time we were really watching it, or remember watching it, I should say, I was just so drawn into it. I was just so stuck on like, where's this going? Like, she's just some girl at a desk. I didn't remember it starting like this. And then like, how does this go all the way to the motel? How does this girl end up in a sketchy, like backwoods motel? So it was, I really liked that. But then the stupid part where like, with the money. The money thing is what got me so annoyed with this movie was like, she was constantly trying to find ways to hide this stack of money.
Yeah, I didn't get where they were going with that.
Yeah, it was like,
nobody knows you have it. Nobody, wherever you are, you've got away.
Right.
Nobody knows where you are. There's no GPS. You don't have a phone. Yeah. You barely got here with a map.
Yes.
It's like you're worried about hiding this money that nobody's going to find you. Wherever you're off to, it's 1960. You're gone.
She sees some cop here. He's 7 hours away from somebody else. Like, that's not happening.
No.
So that was the only thing, because it kept taking me out and I was like laughing at things like that. But
because they do make a big deal about it in that one scene where where she's like, she
newspaper.
takes it out of the perfectly fine envelope where it was hiding, because nobody knows that envelope has money in it. And she's like searching around the room. Like, do I put it in the drawer? Like, oh, I'll put it in this newspaper and roll it up and just lay it on the nightstand. Why? Like, what is the point? And then later on, it becomes a big deal when after Norman kills her and he's like putting all of her belongings in the trunk because he's got to dispose of the car and the body. He's scouring the room and you're supposed to believe like he's going to forget about the money.
Yep.
And then he just finds it and throws it in the trunk. And that's it. It doesn't mean anything else.
It doesn't mean anything in this movie. But Anthony Perkins, like, goddamn.
Yeah.
He was so good. Like, I'm thinking of it as, put myself out there as this scared girl, and this guy's talking to me, and this guy's having a conversation with me. First of all, I never would have said yes to dinner. That was her first mistake.
She was hungry, though.
She was hungry, but I don't care how damn hungry I was.
He seemed charming, though. Like, he does put on a normal sort of
my creep rate,
gentlemanly,
like, bing, 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 like that. Yeah.
I mean, I don't have that.
All
as
those
a guy,
years at Hooters, you learn things. So
yeah, I would imagine it's harder for a guy to spot a creep than it is for a woman. But
yeah, I'm like A+. I should have a PhD. So, so anyway.
Yes, Anthony Perkins, A++.
A++. And again, back to iconic scenes, right? The iconic moment where they were in the parlor. Oh, we can go in the parlor. That whole thing and the way he flips personality in there, right? It's your first glimpse of his two sides, essentially, right? And that
she triggers him.
She triggers him by saying mother should be in a home, and whoof, nope, don't say that to him. Clearly, this has happened before. But the way he switched, and then he went back, like that's one of the most terrifying things as a woman by yourself in a creepy motel and nobody knows where you are. That's terrifying.
Totally. So. No, he is the creep factor in this. Yeah. But unfortunately, it isn't scary. So that's the problem. Is like I sort of wish this was more, or I think of this film more as a thriller than I do a slasher. I think it's going to be harder for it to be high on a slasher list, just because it doesn't really have the same elements as the other films that we're discussing. It's really in a total different league as far as filmmaking goes. It's like top tier filmmaking. You
sound like the list might not be accurate.
No, because here's the thing is with a lot of these movies, like when I'm going into watching a slasher, I want to have fun. I want it to be scary. I'm okay if it's a little campy and it's a little cheesy. That's sort of part of the genre also. Psycho, like I mentioned in the beginning before we even started talking about this, is really hard for my brain to comprehend it as a slasher. And because it's not scary, it's more just engaging from a story point of view. And I think one of the last thing I'll say about this movie is one of the coolest things they did was when you hear Mother's voice, they did use a real female voice, a real older female voice, but it's always in the context of you see Norman. You see Norman at the end just talking as mother, and you just see him on the screen, and it's like this is the inner dialogues going on in his head. And earlier in the film, you hear like a conversation between him going back and forth between mother and Norman. But they never, because they pair the female voice with Norman, it's not an impression you could ever imagine a real man being able to have that voice, to speak like that. But you believe that he could.
Yeah.
Because you never see him actually, articulate it. It's always like an inner monologue in his head. All right, so what's next? We're at number
5. Child's Play.
Child's Play.
The original
Child's Play.
Scary ass doll.
So I predicted going into this because Child's Play has probably the specialist place in my heart out of all of these. I think Child's Play is the very first horror film I've ever seen.
The specialist.
The most special. Yeah, this is probably the first horror film I've seen. And I remember very clearly when it came out and it was in the video stores. We had a video store, 112 Video, which was, that was the mecca for us as kids. It was like, can we go rent a video, So I remember it was like past where my mother would go food shopping, so we'd go to the supermarket with my mom and then we would always beg, can we go to 112 Video on the way home? I'll never forget the Child's Play poster in the window. There was a big promotion for this movie. I'm like, what the heck is this? And they had this special thing where it's like, if you bought the VHS, you got a Chucky doll.
Oh my goodness.
For free. It was like a little plush Chucky doll. And it had like the cigarette burn on his cheek and everything because in the film, And I watched this movie. It scared the crap out of me. I had nightmares constantly about Chucky coming to get me.
Yep.
When I was in the basement, like playing with toys or whatever during the day, and it was time to like shut down, I would like flick the light switch and I would beam up the stairs because I thought like as soon as I turned those lights off, like Chucky was, I thought like Chucky was gonna be there. And that Chucky doll lasted about one night, I think, in my room before we got rid of it because I just couldn't handle it. So I predicted going into this that it was going to be like top 3. It ends up at 5.
I think that the terrifying thing for me is how little and fast he is. Like what you have seen tells you all you need to know. This is a murderous little shitty doll that's running around and he's going to get you and you're not even going to see it coming. That's horrifying.
Would you say that, I would say this is the first film on the list that I do find scary still even.
Yeah.
And as far as like iconic scenes go, it definitely has its fair share. It's tough for me to comment on them because I feel personally biased. I feel like I've seen this movie so many times.
Same.
I saw it so many times as a kid. It had such a heavy impact on me as a kid that I know this movie backwards and forwards, where almost every scene feels like it's iconic to me. Everything from the very beginning with the gun shootout thing, and then he wanders into the toy store. He finds the good guy doll.
The toy store is iconic.
Yeah, the toy store is iconic. It's very, very memorable. Like the lines of good guy dolls.
Yeah, the wall. It's like a wall.
It's like floor to ceiling good guy dolls, and he like crashes into it, and you see like this is the first moment where it's like, okay, this guy's possessing this doll. And then the babysitter kill, right?
Oh, God, yeah.
Like I remember that very, very vividly, where he just wants to watch the news because he wants to hear about, Charles Lee Ray and what happened at the shootout.
So
yeah. And she keeps like trying to shut him down. So like that was iconic. The voodoo doll, right? When he's like, he visits that guy who taught him this, demonic possession thing. He basically kills this guy with a voodoo doll.
Yep.
Which is, you can't forget that. And then the pots and pans thing.
Not
remember
hiding it.
I said this before we even watched the movie. I said, because you were like, oh, I don't know that Chucky's kills are going to be good. I'm like, Chucky has some of the most epic kills. Like they're very like drawn. Some of them are drawn out and like suspenseful. Other times he just like pops up and he's like, motherfucker, like I'm here and you're going to die now. Like,
and then when the fire scene, when she's going to throw him in the fireplace, and that's when he wakes up and you're like, yep.
The first reveal you're talking about. If you don't say your name, I'm going to throw you in the fire.
Yeah, when she's like swinging him and that's the thing and he just goes crazy.
Yes.
Like that's that moment where you're like, I'm not fucking with this thing. Like I'm out. That's it.
Well, first of all, the way they did this puppet for this time period, it's the best Chucky has ever been.
Yep.
They've never improved on this. Like the newer ones, like I sort of told you, I have a problem with like when they went with like the stitched up face and everything. It was
hard.
I just felt like it was a bad choice. Like Chucky is so iconic a certain way. It was like they were almost like trying to reboot him. The puppets in those, they didn't have, you lose a little bit of that that really menacing face, that chubby, it's almost like that chubby,
it was a good
cheeky,
mix of,
kind of menacing.
A good mix of real face and doll face.
Yeah, it's really, really special, I feel like. So,
but
I don't know.
Don't forget the acting. So I know it's weird to say the acting in a movie about a murderous doll, but Andy, first of all, the fact that you can just always in your head remember Andy.
I'm your friend at the end.
I'm your friend at the end. Remember? Like the voice, you hear it in your head. Like you will never forget that with Child's Play comes Andy. You will not forget it. But
the kid is awesome. That actor, he crushes this role.
So good.
I could not believe it. I was like, Jesus, where was this kid's career? Like, did he just never broke out of this? Like he was just Andy from Child's Play and that's it. That's all we got. Because when he like breaks down crying, like you could tell like this kid is like really scared. He's really afraid. Nobody believes him. And you see like they flash to these shots of like when he's in that like mental institution or whatever, and he looks out the window and you see Chucky climbing up the stairs. And he's
like, please.
Yeah, he's like, let me out. I'm like, oh my God, those shots of Chucky are like, okay, he's off in the distance, but any minute now he's going to get here.
Yeah. I mean, overall, it was really, really good. I think it was a really good mix of putting a little person in a costume to run around, right? And they used it just enough to get him feeling real.
Flashes,
yeah. They didn't like overuse it, which I think would have made it worse. It would have been like watching Leprechaun or something.
Yes. Oh God, Leprechaun. Not on this list, thankfully.
All
right, what's number 4?
All right. Number 4 is the ever classic Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, okay.
The OG. So we differed on this one a lot. This one was where I felt like everything happens quick, right? So I loved that it'd be like, she runs in the house and she's like, hello? And it's the door opens and you're hit and it's over, right? Because that's the tension that Leatherface is supposed to give you. Like you don't see it coming, but you felt everything was too fast.
Yeah. So the thing that you're mentioning, the very first time I think you see Leatherface is when the guy wanders into the house.
Yep.
Because they're looking for gasoline or something like that, right? And then Leatherface lives next door. So the guy wanders in, and the first scene where he just smashes him with the mallet.
And
the guy just...
Done.
Like head shaking on the floor, and then drags him in, slams the fucking door again, and it's just like you get a little pregnant pause on that shot.
Yeah.
That wide shot down the hallway. That is... extremely memorable. It's extremely brutal. It's very scary. Yeah. So that one, I'm fine with it being quick, but then it's like a bang, bang, bang. Yeah. They just all wander over into the house, like right into his lap, and he just freaking kills them like right away. There's no chase. There's no anything. It's just one by one. You watch them just drop.
No, the last girl.
Except for the last girl, which is 3/4 of the film is just them
terrorizing her
trying to get away and then terrorizing her.
Yep.
So that aside, because that was like my biggest gripe with the movie is that I wanted it to be higher. I was like, I kind of expected it to be like 2 on this list going into it. Because it is legitimately terrifying, especially that family is just
the police.
Oh my God.
The sheriff, I mean.
And the grandpa, like I still to this day, I don't understand what's going on with the grandpa because he looks like he's 190 years old, but it also looks like just a guy wearing an old guy's face, like a mask. So I'm like, oh wait, okay, maybe that supposed to be like a victim of Leatherface's that he made like this old man mask for his grandpa to wear, or am I supposed to believe that that's his face? Was it like a bad job of trying to make a guy look old,
or like that he is old and does the same thing Leatherface does? That's
what I mean. Like it's a manufactured like old man face. You've always had this fear ever since I've known you that the chainsaw. There's something about the chainsaw. You and your sister both. Like when we went to that haunted house, I don't know if it was last year or maybe the year before, you guys legitimately ran out of, because you walk through all these rooms and there's a different, this one's got clowns in it. This one's got zombies. This one's a claustrophobia room. But we go into the chainsaw guy room and you guys just make a beeline.
I can't handle it.
Yeah. And your sister ends up running because the next room is not really a room. It's more like a hallway. Like you go out and there's a big like extreme turn and then you're supposed to turn into like the last room or whatever. So your sister just runs out. She just beelines down the corridor where there's obviously like supposed to be somebody there to pop out at you. And she just knees this guy in the head while she's running.
Oh my God. I mean, I'm so sorry to whoever that was. If you ever are listening to this, we are really sorry, but don't be as scary next time. Yeah, I don't know what it is either. I went to the Universal Horror Nights in California the year that they did Leatherface, Jason, and Mike Myers, and that haunted house, I could not sleep for a very long time. It's obviously Universal just making the exact thing that you remember from the movie and living it and walking through it. So it was probably one of the most terrifying things I've done ever, to be honest.
I mean, you're not wrong though. Like if you think about the killers on this list and their signature weapon, right? Yep. Is there a more devastating thing than the chainsaw?
No, 2 seconds I don't have a limb.
Yeah. And the fact that the guy is like, he's like 6'4", like 300 pounds, like he's just like, a bit,
like this, like so insane, like it's maddening, like
super scary,
psychotic.
And this is why it's like you look at these movies like I Know What You Did Last Summer, and you're like, you had like this as an example of what a scary slasher is. And you came up with
that
fisherman guy. Like, come on. Like, these guys were doing this 25 years before. Like, what are you doing?
It does match the hook thing, though, because Leatherface in this particular one is very fond of the hook, the meat hook.
That's true. The meat hook. Oh, God.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, let's be real, people. We could talk about this one for a really long time.
Yeah.
Because it is iconic and it does deserve to be really high up.
So we're in the top 3.
So what?
We're in the top 3 now.
Yes, we are. We are onto the top 3. And coming in at 3 is another one that was new to us and we had never seen. And it is Black Christmas.
This movie is dope.
Terrifying.
It's very, very scary. The guy on the phone is just like...
We can't
even describe it.
Yeah. There's nothing that would do it justice for like, I don't even know where to start. Like, oh, hey, I'm here to audition for this creepy dude who's in an attic and I'm supposed to have a crazy voice. Oh, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I have no idea like how this came to life. Like, I would love to know, is this guy alive? The person who did this voice, like... Are you alive and can you call me so you can explain it? But that's how scary it is.
And what's amazing is you never see the guy.
Nope.
They don't catch him.
Just his arm when he gets into the attic.
He lives in the attic of this house. And it's a sorority house. Mm-hmm. For some reason, they have this sorority mother who's, this older lady with bad teeth. And she hides
everywhere.
No, she hides like, what is it, brandy or whatever?
It's not even real, like...
Bottles of brandy all over the house.
That's not even liquor.
Yeah, whatever. It's the strangest thing. Like, this is the character that they came up with. She has a cat. She has like brown teeth and she hides brandy all over the house, including inside the back of a toilet bowl. Okay. So this freaking guy in the attic just keeps calling them with this crazy voice and then just picking them off one by one.
Yep.
In horrendous fashion.
When he's in the girl's closet and he just wraps her in the...
He wraps her in the plastic.
Terrifying. Like I would never go in my walk-in closet. And then he just keeps her
like that upstairs in the attic for the duration of the film. And she's in the window for anybody to see. But it's this gigantic house that's like, it's kind of wooded around them.
Like how often are you like this?
Nobody's really looking up to see it, which is like, but it's a constant shot they sort of keep going to in the film to remind you like, She's up in the attic, just like chilling in the window. Anybody at any moment could recognize this, and just nobody sees it. So he keeps calling, keeps picking them off one by one. The killings are all brutal. The POV shots, again, they use a ton of POV in this movie.
So much.
But they do it really, really well. We got a Chihuahua chorus over here. What's the matter with you guys?
Fireworks.
No, they do it really, really well. There's an awesome balance of the tension and the brutal, like, you know, jumpy stuff that happens quick. The plot is pretty solid. All the acting is pretty solid.
Yeah, they do a great job of making you think, you know, her boyfriend could possibly be that guy. Mm-hmm. And not just like from the storyline, but from the, like, you believed that he could do it. Like, I believed it. I was like, oh yeah, this guy.
Even up until the very last moment. Yeah.
Up until the very last moment, I was like,
you still were like, it's this guy.
Yeah. Overall, I think the story was really, really good. It surprised me how scary it was. Every time the phone rang, I was like, don't be
it's that old school phone, right? That old phone ring that just like, it like just hits you in your soul. Like, oh my God. Like, it's so loud and like, you know, it's the whole thing with the calls coming from inside the house. If you remember, we were like, oh, they kind of bit off of When a Stranger Calls.
Oh, I was just about to
because we mistakenly thought that this film came out after that. We thought When a Stranger Calls was earlier. Mm-hmm. And the whole reveal of like the calls coming from inside your house, you know, get out of the house as soon as possible. We were like, oh, that kind of, it kind of takes us out of it a little bit, because it's like they kind of use something that was already done. Not the case. Mm-hmm. This is the originator.
Yeah. And I mean, I was terrified from When a Stranger Calls, but this is way worse. Like, When a Stranger Calls, it's more like whispery and like it's creepy and it's, you know, it's scary and it gets worse. But this is like, you can recreate it.
Oh, it's next level. Yeah. It's next level.
Yeah.
All right. What's number 2?
All right. We're getting it to the end. This one, I've literally had people say to me, wait, are you serious? And we're dead ass serious, everybody.
Scream.
It's Scream.
Yeah.
And we want to preface that we really tried to not be tied to the fact that this was our time.
Yeah, it's hard not to be biased again with this film. I tried really hard not to have that, because I kind of knew, like, okay, Scream, this was a movie, you know, I saw this in the movie theater.
Yep.
When it came out, like, this was a big deal. This is a big deal.
And let's jump right to it. The iconic first scene. Like, come on, the Drew Barrymore scene? Like,
that, well, ultimately, this is why this movie ended up so high at number 2, because from a rewatchability standpoint, if you were to ask me, if you were to say, like, okay, out of these 10 films, you could watch one scene from one of these movies, which one would it be? And it's the opening scene in Scream.
Yeah.
It's
entertaining.
Yes.
It's funny. It's scary. You are rooting for her almost, right? Like,
very much so, yeah. You care about her almost immediately.
And how long is the scene? 15 minutes?
Yeah,
maybe?
Probably.
Yeah. Like, it was like a short horror movie in itself.
Yes, it could have been a short.
It's like, maybe that was purposeful. I don't know. I don't read like up on things like that, but it almost seems purposeful. Yeah. Based on
no, it's setting up the whole premise of the film.
But
obviously,
it could sit on its own.
Yes,
is what I mean.
Totally
like
sit
as
on
a short 15-minute.
And now they movie. Sort of take a page out of Black Christmas's book a little bit here, where it's like the call is not necessarily coming from inside the house, but it's coming from like your backyard, essentially,
somewhere near you,
right?
Somewhere where you're visible,
right?
Yeah.
So interesting little take on it.
Don't forget that it's like still very early for cell phones, so that's
right. The fact that somebody would be outside calling you is unlikely.
Yes, so like that's a very key point to this. Is like you have to look at it as you don't know any better.
Well, this is also why the cell phone falling out of the boyfriend's pocket is such a believable sticking point.
Yeah.
Right? Because at that time it's like, okay, what is a teenage boy in high school doing with a cell phone? Mm-hmm. They didn't have, nobody had cell phones in high school. Yep. It wasn't a thing. It was, so the fact that he shows up when she's being attacked and the cell phone drops out of his pocket, it's like, okay, this actually, it might seem cheesy or like a weird, like forced plot entry point to somebody that doesn't understand that, like, no, back then
this was weird.
This would have been weird because who else is making a phone call from the backyard other than this guy who just showed up with a cell phone?
And she must, I think what you assume there as well is a cell phone falls. She doesn't know that he has a cell phone. Mm. You know, like that's the thing too, is that when it falls and she's looking at him, that's the thought. That's what I always looked at it as. Is like, that he doesn't have a fucking cell phone. Yeah. So, I mean, you talk about the opening scene. We can talk about that scene so vividly, right? Like, it's
the popcorn.
Yeah, like you can just keep going through this movie again and again. We quoted it when we kicked off this podcast when we were talking about prom night, right? So there's so many things in this movie that are iconic. It's like the whole film by that recipe could not be considered iconic, right? Like there's not really anything that is so major of a flaw in my mind that I can even point out. I'd be nitpicking, I feel.
Well, it's very well casted. Yeah. All the characters that they're trying to get across come across, very, very vividly. Like you know exactly what they're going for.
Yep.
Based on who they casted and how they dressed them. You very much know like who Deputy Dewey is. You know who that guy is.
Deputy Dewey boy.
Just by the way he's dressed and how he carries himself and the mustache. And, David Arquette has this he's just oozing character in this role. Like, when you first meet him, you know exactly what that character is. And therefore you immediately care about him.
And
the news reporter, like
Courtney Cox.
Courtney Cox, like perfectly cast. Like she's this bitchy person who's like, she's trying to like sell her books or whatever. It's kind of sleazy, but then you realize like there's a little nugget of truth behind what she's getting after, something that's like important to the plot. Like it comes across very, very clear that, okay, she might be this bitch and you're supposed to hate her, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. She's onto something. Yeah.
And then Rose McGowan it's one of my favorite characters in a horror movie. I love
Tatum.
Yeah, Tatum is the best lines. Like I could quote it all night long. And even Neve Campbell she does come across as like a troubled teen girl just trying to like figure shit out a year after her mom dies, right? And to be in the midst of all that, like her mental state, she's a strong ass woman and she's like, you're not going to get me. But she had such beautiful, fragile moments that again, it didn't feel like a cheesy movie at that point. And then also, this is where we're a little biased maybe, but I always feel like this was one movie that felt like a true depiction of kids that age.
It's closer. I wouldn't say it's there yet.
Why?
I mean, what's his name? Skeet Ulrich, or is that his name? I mean, that guy doesn't look like, Billy. He doesn't look like he's in high school.
No, I mean it more as like the things that they do and the way that they're portrayed as people. It wasn't like, we never did this.
It doesn't feel campy or cliche as much. They do feel like fresh, original characars.
Yeah, and it's like, everything they do is believable. There's a house party, it ends, and then there's always that group chilling on the couch and people are too drunk, right? And, the way that they portray the high school was realistic to me. Right. There wasn't anything that you watch and you're like, what? Who did this? Like, who did that? Who had this? Who had that? It was all like very realistic, small town, everybody knows each other vibes. And I liked it. And I thought that was what really added to the story. I agree.
You very much invest in this storyline, this plot.
Yep.
You care about the characters. The Tatum kill in the garage door is devastating.
Iconic again.
Like I remember watching that in the movie theaters, just being bummed that like she doesn't make it. Like she's not one of the characters that are gonna make it because it's like she does leave you wanting more, right? You're like, oh God, if there's going to be more of these, like I kind of wanted to see more of that character.
Yeah, I want to see her kick somebody's ass.
But that's great. Like these kills, they all have weight on you as you watch the movie.
And you remember I remember every single kill in this movie. Like I could walk you through the steps.
It's just very quotable too.
Mm-hmm. The Jeep scene when she's like, she forgot the keys the keys were in the ignition and they took it and she's jumping and trying to, and then she's sitting here in the back of the thing comes up and you're like, fuck that. Like, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, argue us all you want right now. No shot. Like, everything we talked about, I think like you and I can.
Well, this is a movie I feel like I'm always going to go back and rewatch at some point at this time of year.
Yeah, it's always good.
Yeah, like this time of year, there's going to be a day in October where I'm like, I feel like I just feel like watching Scream.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say that about some of the movies on this list. Like,
I wouldn't put it on again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So obviously, what's number one? What's the last one on the list?
I mean, I don't think anyone's surprised about this, but it is the classic Halloween.
Yes. Now, wait, I would argue that you didn't think Halloween was going to be number one when we started this.
Yeah. I was jaded jaded by the Freddy Jason stuff. I don't know. Like, it was like, oh, am I not remembering this? Am I not remembering it like the way it really was?
Yeah. Yeah. So in my head, I kind of knew all along. I'm like, I've seen the original Halloween so many times. Talk about a movie that you're gonna want to go back and watch this time of year. It's every single time for me. I'm gonna want to have a night where I just watch the original Halloween movie.
And I think for me, it's that I was so scared from the first one that I didn't watch it. Like, it was like it's like The Exorcist for me. Like, no, I'm not just going to be sitting at home chilling watching The Exorcist. I'm not going to chill at home and watch Mike Myers either. Like, it terrifies me to just see a dude in a mask with a knife who you can't stop. Like, that's real. That could be tomorrow. Like, that could be 2 days from now.
I think what's interesting about this one too, you have a thing with the home invasion stuff.
Oh, I love. But I hate, but I love.
It terrifies you.
Yes,
and rightfully so. I feel like home invasion is probably pretty high on most people's fears in life.
Oh my God.
As nightmare. Like something you do not want to deal with. Mm-hmm. He sort of is a little bit of a home invader, Mike Myers. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about it. Like, Freddy, if you're talking about the big three, like Freddy's invading your mind or whatever.
Terrifying.
Which is also scary. Jason is basically just killing you because you're at his lake. Like, just don't go to his lake.
No, then he starts killing you in
then
weird
he takes
places.
Manhattan and whatever the hell. But
space, apparently.
Yeah, goes to space.
I can't.
But Mike Myers is like, you're just sitting there chilling, like enjoying Halloween and all like the great stuff that comes along with it. Yeah, you're cozy in your house and like you left the back door open, bitch. And
here I am.
Now here's Mike Myers invading your house.
Yeah.
And that mask is insanely scary still. It's the scariest mask.
The shittiness makes it terrifying.
I think it's the scariest mask. It's scarier than Leatherface.
Here's the thing. It's the mask. Let's look at it this way. It is the mask that I'll see and I will be terrified knowing that it doesn't matter. Like, it's not real, Dolores. This is Halloween. That's a costume. If I see the person walking down the street as Mike Myers, I will run. Mm-hmm. I will run and the police will probably think I'm being murdered.
Yeah. No, it's freaking scary for some reason. I don't know why. It's the most random thing.
But put on a Freddy mask, I'm like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. It just doesn't have the same, well, especially the way that they do the lighting. When he's attacking Jamie Lee Curtis's character, Laurie.
Yeah.
At this point, it's like it's nighttime. It's like basically things are like moonlit. Like, there's not a ton of lighting going on. It's like a lot of blue light and a lot of black. And
moody.
Yeah, it's super moody. And the way that that silhouette of Mike Myers sort of interacts with that lighting is really, really, it's great. Like, it's perfect. Mm-hmm. Like, there's nothing you would change about it.
Yep.
Going back, like, okay, they just nailed it. Like, where the camera is positioned is perfect for when she's sitting there in the foreground and focus, thinking that she just stabbed him and he's dead.
Yep.
and he's in the background, inside the depth of field.
Yep.
Sits up.
Slowly
just
not even
sits
slowly,
up.
but not slow, but not fast, right? I don't even know how to describe it, but
it's very methodical.
Oh my God.
And then the music. The
entire soundtrack.
Dum, dum. And it's just like, holy crap, turn around.
Yeah, you're just like, come on. Yeah. The music's going to get crazier.
The music is freaking perfect. It's awesome.
Yep.
There's no better way you could have scored this movie. There's no better way you could have filmed this movie.
Isn't this the one that I was reading? Oh, no. Psycho.
Mm-hmm.
That Psycho, remember, it was that Hitchcock originally didn't want any music at all in that shower scene. He wanted it to be so organic. And obviously, he was presented with the sound of the slashing knives, and obviously that's what you got. But it's interesting because, again, a lot of these top ones, it's the music, right? That also really helps. So I agree. I think the music in that is what gives me the heebie-jeebies.
It's paired so perfectly with what they're,
You see Mike Myers and you just hear it in your head. Nope, I'm out.
Well, the exact way in which they're trying to scare you visually is echoed perfectly in the soundtrack. It's like this, it's just this brilliant marriage of the two. And it's like, I feel that audio is telling me how to feel. The visuals telling me how to feel that way. And it's like, it's really, really, really something. I mean, I feel like the rest of this series just totally waters down how amazing this movie is. It's a classic.
Yeah.
But it just gets so goofy.
And you're still scared. I'm telling everybody who's listening, if anyone listens to this at all, I urge you to have the darkest house, right? Turn off all the lights, put away your phone.
Popcorn, some sort of snack.
Grab some popcorn. You can't do this if you don't really immerse in the experience. And when you do that with Halloween, every step, every sound, everything around you is going to freak you out for a little while, at least.
No, 100%. Yeah, you want to try to recreate that same sort of atmosphere.
You got to kind of be in a theater.
Be in the moment. Yeah.
Shut everything off.
Feel like you're in the movie.
So Halloween, no surprise. Mark knew it all along, but I wanted to be open. I really didn't want to think about who was going to land where. So I feel really good about the lineup in terms of even how likely I'd be to watch it again. Because now I think we have some new favorites.
We do. And I think, you and I also talked about maybe going back and revisiting Freddy and Jason specifically, because I feel like we both kind of felt cheated by the originals in terms of we kind of wanted to see Jason. We wanted to remember that. And we kind of wanted to see the Freddy that we remembered in our head. As that movie evolved, there were some gems in there where it probably was a lot scarier than what the original one was.
Yeah.
But people hold the originals higher because, look, this is the start. It's the nostalgia of it, right?
Of course. I mean, you think about back to saying that the Mike Myers mask is terrifying. You see somebody dressed like Jason with the hockey mask. The hockey mask is never not terrifying anymore.
Definitely scary.
There's nothing about it that's cool. So it does beg the question that does the top 10 list deserve to at least get some competition from the best of those two franchises? So that might be another little side.
Maybe we'll revisit and just see if we can get them higher on the list, just for Freddy and Jason purposes.
Yeah, I don't
know. Judge them by their worst effort.
Yep.
I don't know. I wouldn't say it's their worst effort, but probably not their best.
Let's say the initial. The idea was there. The execution was off a little bit, Now we're going to get to the ones where they had it just right and they peaked.
Right. All right. Cool. So we're going to we'll be back with another top 10 list. Now, are you going to update these on Instagram again?
Yes, I will update. I'm going to
Is there going to be a special Instagram for this podcast, or is it going to be on your...
It is. I don't remember the handle, so we'll put it in the video.
In the description.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Take it easy.
Woo!